grand war room of the Ebon Spire. Imperator Kraz stood with his 6 limbs spread wide in a gesture of dominance. His scaled skin glimmered under the holographic displays that projected images of human scout vessels drifting at the edge of Andromax territory. The gathered War Council, representatives from all 10 species of the mighty Imperium, chittered and growled their amusement as Kraz manipulated the display to zoom in on one particular human ship. "Observe," he said, voice resonating through gill-like structures at his throat. "Pathetic tin cans, hardly worth our firepower." His upper limbs gestured dismissively at the sleek, compact vessel. "Their hulls would buckle under a single volley from our tertiary batteries. Their weapons are rudimentary chemical explosives and basic kinetic projectiles." General Zalara, his second-in-command, shifted uncomfortably behind him. Unlike the Imperator, her species possessed only 4 limbs, but her mind was sharper than most in the Council. "With respect, Imperator, our intelligence suggests their technology has advanced considerably since our last—" "Intelligence," Kraz interrupted with a bark of laughter. "The monkeys only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 of their years ago. We have ruled the stars for millennia. What could they possibly have developed that would concern us?" The War Council erupted in sycophantic agreement. Zalara fell silent, her compound eyes shifting uneasily between the display and her overconfident leader. At that moment, a shrill alarm cut through the chamber. The holographic display flickered, then shifted to show real-time battle footage from the outer defensive perimeter. A lone human corvette, identified by the computer as the Aurora's Wrath, executed a series of impossible maneuvers, dancing between the hulking Andromax frigates guarding the approach to their territory. "Target lock acquired," announced a flat, computerized voice from the corvette. The transmission had been intercepted and was playing for all in the war room to hear. "What impertinence," hissed Kraz. "They dare to broadcast their attack plans?" On the display, a small projectile launched from the Aurora's Wrath. It seemed almost laughably tiny compared to the massive frigate it targeted. Kraz began to order countermeasures, but the words died in his throat. The moment the projectile made contact with the frigate's engine block, a blinding flash erupted. When the light faded, the entire rear third of the alien vessel had simply vanished. Not destroyed, not broken apart. It had ceased to exist, leaving a perfectly smooth cross-section where armor, crew quarters, and propulsion systems should have been. The frigate drifted helplessly, atmosphere and crew venting into the vacuum. Stunned silence fell over the war room. "Impossible," Kraz finally whispered. Before anyone could respond, the human corvette accelerated to light speed and disappeared. On the bridge of the Aurora's Wrath, Captain Mara Park exhaled shakily as they made their emergency jump. Her dark eyes never left the tactical display until the blue shift of FTL travel replaced the stars on their view screen. "Phase Cascade torpedo functioning at 78% efficiency," reported Lieutenant Rafiq Al-Sayed from the engineering station. His hands trembled slightly as he reviewed the data. "Better than simulations predicted." "Did we lose anyone?" Mara asked, finally releasing her death grip on the command chair. Communications Officer Devi Singh shook her head, copper-colored braids swinging. "All hands accounted for. Captain, minor injuries in engineering from the evasive maneuvers." Mara nodded, allowing herself the ghost of a smile. "Send a coded burst to command. Tell them Operation First Strike was a success." She turned to the view screen, where the swirling blue of hyperspace obscured the enormity of what they had just accomplished and unleashed. "And now," she said quietly, "we've got their attention." The human strike against an Andromax frigate marked a turning point in a conflict that had been brewing for decades. Since humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage 50 years earlier, the Andromax Imperium had viewed Earth and its colonies with contempt. Humans were latecomers to interstellar travel, still recovering from the devastation of their unification wars that had nearly destroyed their home world. The Imperium, by contrast, was a coalition of 10 alien species who had conquered and subjugated a quarter of the galaxy. Their doctrine of manifest supremacy held that technologically superior civilizations had not just the right, but the obligation to rule over lesser species. Earth, with its limited fleet and fledgling colonies, seemed like an easy conquest, another notch in the Imperium's ever-expanding borders. What the aliens failed to understand was that humanity's violent past had forged a species uniquely adapted to warfare and innovation under pressure. The Unification Wars had driven advances in weapons technology that other species might have taken centuries to develop, while the Imperium had evolved gradually over millennia of unchallenged dominance. Humans had compressed their military evolution into decades of desperate survival. The Andromax vessels were enormous, planet-killing dreadnoughts bristling with mass driver batteries and protected by energy shields that could withstand asteroids. But they were also slow, predictable, and hampered by the arrogance of their commanders. Human vessels, by contrast, were smaller, modular corvettes equipped with experimental quantum phase torpedoes and adaptive nano armor. What they lacked in brute force, they made up for in speed, adaptability, and the willingness to take risks that the long-established Imperium considered reckless. Captain Mara Park embodied this human approach to warfare. Born in the orbital habitats of Mars, she had lost her family station to raiders during the final years of the Unification Wars. That loss had driven her to join Earth's Navy, where her tactical brilliance and unflinching determination quickly elevated her through the ranks. By 40, she commanded the Aurora's Wrath, one of Earth's newest corvettes, with a diverse crew that represented the best minds humanity had to offer. Lieutenant Rafik al-Sayed was perhaps the most brilliant of them all. The revolutionary engineer had been working on quantum physics applications since his teens, and his phase cascade disintegration warhead represented the culmination of his life's work. The weapon didn't simply destroy its target, it unraveled it at the molecular level, causing a chain reaction that converted matter to energy in a controlled wave. The technology was still experimental, unpredictable, and potentially as dangerous to its users as to its targets. In the days following the Aurora's Wrath's successful strike, Imperator Kraz summoned his top strategists and scientists to explain how a single human torpedo had disintegrated a third of an Andromax frigate. The answers were unsatisfying. The weapon appears to work on principles we have theorized but never successfully implemented, explained Chief Scientist Vorlak, his tentacles writhing nervously. It triggers a quantum cascade that essentially unravels the bonds holding matter together, converting it directly to energy without the typical explosive detonation of conventional weapons. And why? Kraz asked with dangerous quiet. Have we not developed such weapons ourselves? Vorlak's color shifted to a sickly yellow. The energy requirements are astronomical. The precision needed is beyond our manufacturing capabilities. And most importantly, Imperator. The risk of uncontrolled cascade reactions made research in this direction ethically questionable. Ethics? Kraz spat the word. The monkeys clearly have no such reservations. General Zalara stepped forward. This may be precisely why they've succeeded where we failed. Imperator, desperation drives innovation in directions that comfort and superiority do not. Kraz turned his attention to her, eyes narrowing. You sound almost admiring. General, respectful of the threat, she corrected carefully. I believe we have gravely underestimated humanity's technological capabilities and their willingness to deploy potentially self-destructive weapons. This changes our strategic calculus significantly. The Imperator considered her words, then made a slashing gesture with his upper limbs. Assemble the 7th Fleet. We will crush this human insurgents before they can deploy more of these weapons. One successful strike does not change the fundamental equation. We outnumber them 1,000 to 1. Zalara bowed, but her compound eyes remained fixed on Kraz. As you command, Imperator. But I recommend caution. The humans have shown themselves to be unpredictable. Your concerns are noted. General, Kraz dismissed her with another gesture. Now carry out my orders. 2 weeks later, the Aurora's Wrath found itself leading a small flotilla of human vessels on a stealth raid against an Andromax mining convoy in the Epsilon Eridani system. The mining operations there were extracting rare heavy elements crucial for Andromax weapons manufacturing. Captain Mara Park gathered her command crew for a final briefing before they dropped out of hyperspace. Intelligence indicates minimal escort vessels, she explained, highlighting the projected route on the tactical display. 2 frigates, similar to the one we engaged previously, plus a handful of fighter craft. Our mission is simple: disable the mining vessels, plant charges on the largest material transports, and withdraw before reinforcements arrive. Lieutenant Al-Sayed cleared his throat. Captain, the phase cascade torpedoes are still highly experimental. I wouldn't recommend using them unless absolutely necessary. Mara nodded. Agreed. Conventional weapons only for this operation. We save our ace for when we truly need it. She looked around at her crew, humans from every corner of Earth and its colonies, united by their determination to protect their species' independence. Questions? Tactical Officer Jiro Tanaka raised his hand. Rules of engagement regarding Andromax personnel? Minimal casualties, Mara said firmly. This is about resources, not revenge. Disable. Don't destroy unless necessary for mission success or crew safety. The crew nodded, though some with visible reluctance. Everyone had lost someone to Andromax aggression in recent years. This isn't about satisfying our anger, Mara continued, reading their expressions. It's about showing the Imperium that humanity cannot be conquered or subjugated. Every mission we complete successfully sends that message more clearly than 1,000 dead alien crew members. The raid initially went according to plan. The human flotilla dropped out of hyperspace with precision timing, catching the mining convoy off guard. The Aurora's Wrath led the assault, targeting the frigate's weapon systems with conventional torpedoes while smaller craft disabled the mining vessel's engines. But 15 minutes into the operation, long-range sensors detected multiple hyperspace signatures approaching. "Captain," called out sensor operator Lisa Chen. 12 Andromax signatures incoming, reading multiple Dreadnought-class vessels. Mara's blood ran cold. "It's a trap. They anticipated our attack." She slammed the ship-wide comm. "All units, mission abort, emergency withdrawal, pattern Delta." As the human vessels scrambled to disengage, the space around them lit up with the blue-white flares of Andromax vessels dropping out of hyperspace. The 7th Fleet had arrived in force, far beyond what should have been allocated to protect a simple mining operation. "They're cutting off our escape vectors," reported Tanaka, his voice steady despite the desperate situation. "Hyperspace inhibitors active." Mara's mind raced through options, each worse than the last. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and now prevented from making the jump to light speed. The flotilla would be annihilated unless she found a solution. "Lieutenant Al-Sayed," she said quietly, "ready 1-phase cascade torpedo." The engineer paled. "Captain, in this tight formation, the cascade effect could reach our own vessels." "I'm aware of the risks. Target the lead Dreadnought's command section only. Minimum yield setting." Across the void of space. Aboard the Imperium flagship Dominant Will. Imperator Kraz watched with satisfaction as his fleet surrounded the human vessels. "They took the bait perfectly," he said to General Zilara. "Now we will crush their pathetic rebellion and take their weapon technology for ourselves." Zilara studied the tactical display with concern. "They're cornered. That makes them dangerous." "It makes them dead," Kraz corrected. He opened a channel to the human flotilla. "Attention, human vessels. This is Imperator Kraz of the Andromax Imperium. Your primitive attempt at guerrilla warfare has failed. Surrender immediately, and I may spare some of your lives for study." "On the Aurora's Wrath." Mara listened to the transmission with a grim expression. She nodded to Communications Officer Singh. "This is Captain Mara Park of the Earth Defense Force. We do not surrender to bullies and tyrants, no matter how many ships they bring." She cut the transmission and turned to Al-Sayed. "Status on the torpedo?" "Armed and ready." "Captain, but I must formally register my objection to—" "Noted. Lieutenant, target locked?" Al-Sayed swallowed hard. "Target locked. Cascade reaction will be contained to the forward third of the dreadnought if all goes as calculated. Fire." The phase cascade torpedo launched from the Aurora's Wrath, a small, unremarkable projectile that the Andromax point defenses barely registered among the conventional munitions being exchanged. It struck the hull of the dominant Will just below the command deck. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a pinpoint of blinding white light appeared at the impact site. It spread outward in a perfect sphere, consuming matter as it grew. Where it passed, nothing remained. No debris, no explosion, simply absence where solid matter had been. Inside the dominant Will. Alarm shrieked as entire sections of the ship simply ceased to exist. Kraz watched in horror as the tactical display showed the cascade effect moving through his vessel, deck by deck, system by system. "Evacuate!" he roared, abandoning dignity as he shoved subordinates aside to reach the escape pods. "All hands abandon ship." The cascade effect stopped expanding after consuming approximately 1/4 of the massive dreadnought, leaving a perfectly hemispherical void in its structure. The ship listed badly, crippled but not destroyed. In the chaos that followed, the human flotilla found their opening. As Andromax vessels broke formation to assist the flagship, gaps appeared in their blockade. "All ships, make for Sector 47 Alpha," Mara ordered. "Full emergency thrust." The human vessels accelerated through the gap, taking heavy fire but managing to clear the hyperspace inhibitor field. One by one, they jumped to light speed, the Aurora's Wrath covering their retreat until the last friendly ship had escaped. "Damage report," Mara demanded as they prepared their own jump. "Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7, reported Al-Sayed. "Nano armor compensating but at 31% capacity. We've lost the port maneuvering thrusters and long-range communications." "Casualties?" 5 confirmed dead, 17 injured, 2 missing. Mara closed her eyes briefly. Each loss cut deep, but the alternative would have been total annihilation. "Make the jump. Lieutenant Singh, get us home." As the Aurora's Wrath disappeared into hyperspace, the remaining Andromax fleet was left with a crippled flagship and a profound sense of shock. What had begun as a trap for the humans had instead demonstrated, once again, the devastating potential of their new weapon. In the aftermath of the mining convoy raid, both sides reassessed their positions. The Andromax Imperium, for the first time in centuries, faced an adversary with weapons technology that could potentially match or exceed their own. Imperator Kraz, his pride wounded but his thirst for conquest undiminished, ordered a full mobilization of the Imperium's forces. "We will crush them with overwhelming numbers," he declared to his war council. "If they have 100 of these weapons, we have 10,000 ships. The mathematics of annihilation favor us." General Zalara, now openly skeptical of Kraz's strategy, spoke up. "Imperator, perhaps diplomacy would be the wiser course. If the humans can arm more ships with these phase cascade weapons, then we destroy them before they can." Kraz interrupted. "I want their homeworld located. We will strike directly at Earth and end this irritation permanently." Meanwhile, on Earth, the United Defense Council received the after-action reports from the Aurora's Wrath with mixed emotions. The phase cascade torpedo had saved the flotilla, but its destructive potential raised serious ethical questions. "We cannot mass-produce these weapons," argued Councillor Ishiguro. "The risk of cascade failure is too great, and the ethical implications of unmaking matter itself." He trailed off, shaking his head. Admiral Okonkwo, the highest-ranking military officer present, leaned forward. With respect, Counselor, the Andromax don't share your ethical concerns. They will annihilate us without hesitation. And we maintain our humanity by becoming like them, Ishiguro challenged. Captain Mara Park, still bearing the physical and emotional wounds of the recent engagement, had been summoned to provide her first-hand assessment. The weapon saved my crew and flotilla, she said simply. But Lieutenant Al-Sayed believes its use comes with increasing risks. Each deployment potentially destabilizes the quantum field in that region of space. Repeated use could have unpredictable consequences. Al-Sayed himself sat beside her, dark shadows under his eyes from weeks without proper sleep. The engineer had been working non-stop to refine the weapon's containment protocols. The phase cascade effect is still not fully understood, he admitted. In theory, an unconstrained reaction could continue indefinitely, consuming everything in its path. The torpedoes we've deployed have fail-safes, but they're not foolproof. A heavy silence fell over the council chamber. We need time, Mara said finally. Time to refine the technology, understand its limitations, and develop proper protocols for its use. Admiral Okonkwo nodded slowly. Then we need to buy that time. Captain Park, your flotilla performed admirably in the last engagement. I'm authorizing the formation of a special task force under your command. Your mission will be to delay the Imperium's advance through guerrilla tactics while Lieutenant Al-Sayed and his team work to stabilize the phase cascade technology. Mara straightened in her chair. What resources will we have? 5 corvettes, including the Aurora's Wrath. Once repairs are complete, a support vessel with advanced manufacturing capabilities to maintain your fleet in the field. And 2 prototype phase cascade torpedoes to be used only as a last resort. The weight of this responsibility settled on Mara's shoulders. When do we deploy? As soon as your ship is ready. Intelligence suggests the Imperium is already preparing a major offensive. We need you out there drawing their attention away from Earth. Lieutenant Al-Sayed cleared his throat. Admiral, with your permission, I'd like to continue serving aboard the Aurora's Wrath. My direct observations of the weapon's performance will be invaluable to my research team. Admiral Okonkwo considered this, then nodded. Granted, but Captain Park has final authority on when and if the weapons are deployed. As the council meeting adjourned, Mara found herself walking alongside Al-Sayed through the underground corridors of Earth Defense Headquarters. Are you sure about this, Rafik? She asked quietly. You could do your work from the safety of a research facility. The engineer smiled faintly. There's nothing safe about this technology. Captain, besides, I built it. If something goes wrong, I should be there to fix it, or face the consequences. For the next 2 months, Mara's task force waged a guerrilla campaign against Andromax supply lines, communication relays, and outlying bases. They struck quickly and vanished before the lumbering Imperium forces could respond effectively. The human vessels, smaller and more maneuverable, exploited weaknesses in Andromax defensive formations that the aliens had never needed to address before. With each successful raid, humanity bought precious time. Earth's shipyards worked around the clock, building more corvettes and retrofitting existing vessels with enhanced defenses. Lieutenant Al-Sayed and his team made incremental improvements to the phase cascade technology, gradually increasing its stability and control protocols. But the Andromax Imperium was not idle. Through captured human crew members and recovered debris, they began to understand the principles behind the phase cascade effect. Imperator Kraz diverted enormous resources to developing countermeasures and, more ambitiously, their own version of the weapon. General Zilara watched these developments with increasing alarm. As Kraz became more obsessed with matching human technology, he neglected the strategic weaknesses that Mara's task force continued to exploit. Worse, He dismissed intelligence reports suggesting that humans were establishing hidden bases throughout Andromax territory, preparing for a larger conflict. "We need to consolidate our forces," Zalara argued during a particularly heated war council. "These human raids are depleting our resources faster than we can replace them." "Consolidation is weakness," Kraz replied dismissively. "We maintain pressure on all fronts. Our scientists assure me they are close to reproducing the humans' weapon technology." "And if they succeed," Zalara pressed, "do we unleash the same weapon that we have condemned the humans for using?" "Where does this escalation end, Imperator?" Kraz's eyes narrowed dangerously. "It ends with humanity's submission or extinction. That has always been the way of the Imperium." "Perhaps," Zalara said quietly. "That is why we face this challenge now. Perhaps the universe has sent us the humans to teach us that domination is not the only path to survival." Her words were met with shocked silence from the council. Such philosophical heresy was unprecedented from a high-ranking military leader. "You forget yourself." "General," Kraz said coldly, "your duty is to execute my strategies, not question the foundations of our society." Zalara bowed stiffly. "As you command, Imperator." But as she left the council chamber, her mind was made up. The Imperium's course under Kraz would lead to catastrophe, possibly for both species. She began to formulate a plan that would have been unthinkable months earlier, contacting the humans directly. Aboard the Aurora's Wrath, now bearing the scars of dozens of engagements. Captain Mara Park reviewed the latest intelligence reports with growing concern. Despite their successful campaign of disruption, the task force had detected massive Andromax fleet movements converging near the Procyon system, just 2 jumps from Earth. "They've found us," she told her assembled officers. "Or at least, they've narrowed down Earth's location significantly." Lieutenant Al-Sayed rubbed his tired eyes. "How much time do we have?" "Intelligence estimates 2 weeks before they launch their assault. We need to buy more time." Tactical Officer Tanaka shook his head. "Our ships are running on emergency repairs at this point. The crew is exhausted. I'm not sure how much more we can do without reinforcements." Communications Officer Singh suddenly straightened at her console. "Captain, I'm detecting an encrypted transmission on an old Earth frequency. It appears to be coming from an Andromax vessel, but the encryption is one of ours." Mara frowned. "A trap, or one of our captured people being forced to communicate?" "The signature doesn't match any known human transponders. It's requesting direct communication with you specifically." "Captain," after a moment's hesitation, Mara nodded. "Route it to my ready room. Monitor from out here, and be ready to cut the connection at the first sign of trouble." In her private office, Mara activated the comm system and found herself face-to-face with an alien she recognized immediately from intelligence briefings. "General Zalara," she said evenly, "this is an unexpected call." The Andromax officer's compound eyes flickered with what might have been nervousness. "Captain Park, I am taking an enormous risk contacting you directly." "I imagine you are. What do you want?" "To prevent a catastrophe." Zalara's voice was steady despite her obvious tension. "Imperator Kraz has located your homeworld. He plans to attack with the full might of the Imperium, including prototype phase cascade weapons, reverse-engineered from your technology." Mara kept her expression neutral despite the chill that ran down her spine. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I believe this path leads to destruction for both our peoples. The phase cascade effect is not fully understood by our scientists. If both sides deploy these weapons in large numbers, the cascades could merge, creating an uncontrollable reaction." Mara finished for her. It was the scenario that Lieutenant Al-Sayed had been warning about, the nightmare possibility that kept him working through sleepless nights. "Precisely," Zalara confirmed. "I am prepared to provide the details of the assault plan, including fleet compositions and jump coordinates. In exchange, I ask only that you use this information to force a diplomatic solution rather than escalate to mutual annihilation. Mara studied the alien carefully. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, Zalara replied simply. Verify everything I tell you. But know this. I have served the Imperium for 80 of your years. I have conquered worlds and subjugated species in its name. But I have never faced an adversary like humanity, one that forces us to question our most fundamental beliefs about our place in the universe. The sincerity in the alien's voice was unmistakable. Mara made her decision. Send your information. I'll take it to my superiors. There's one more thing, Zalara added. Kraz plans to deploy the fleet in 5 of your days, not the 2 weeks your intelligence suggests. You have very little time. After receiving Zalara's transmission, Mara convened an emergency meeting with her officers to verify the information. Lieutenant Al-Sayed's analysis was particularly troubling. If these schematics are accurate, he said, pointing to the Andromax weapon designs Zalara had provided. Their version of the phase cascade torpedo lacks critical containment protocols. They've solved the power requirements and targeting systems, but they've completely overlooked the quantum field stabilizers. What does that mean in practical terms? Mara asked. Al-Sayed's expression was grim. It means their weapons could trigger an uncontrolled cascade reaction, one that could potentially expand indefinitely. That's not possible. Tactical Officer Tanaka objected. The energy requirements would... The reaction generates its own energy through matter conversion. Al-Sayed interrupted. That's what makes it so dangerous. Once started, it becomes self-sustaining unless properly contained. A heavy silence fell over the briefing room. We need to warn Earth, Mara said finally. And we need a plan to stop the Imperium fleet before they can deploy these weapons. Communications Officer Singh shook her head. Long-range communications are still down from our last engagement. We'd have to get closer to a relay station, which would take at least 3 days at our current position. Too long, Mara murmured. We'll have to intercept them ourselves. The task force consisted of just 4 operational corvettes now, plus their support vessel, against the 100-plus ships Zalara had indicated would participate in the assault. They stood no chance in direct combat. What about the nebula in the Procyon system? Suggested Navigator Leeway. The dust and radiation would interfere with their sensors and communications. We could use that to our advantage. Mara considered this. Lure them in, then hit and run. Al-Sayed leaned forward. Captain, I've been working on modifications to our remaining phase cascade torpedoes. If we could deliver them precisely at the heart of their fleet while they're in the nebula, the effect might be magnified by the charged particles in the cloud. You're talking about using the weapons offensively, Mara said carefully. The very scenario General Zalara warned about. Yes and no, Al-Sayed replied. I believe I can calibrate the cascade to burn itself out after a specific expansion threshold. It would be devastating but contained, and it might be our only option. Mara took a deep breath. How long would you need? 48 hours, maybe less if I push the safety protocols. You have 36. Mara decided. Navigator Lee, plot a course to the Procyon Nebula. We'll position ourselves and wait for the Imperium fleet. Lieutenant Al-Sayed, I want hourly updates on your progress. As the meeting adjourned, Mara remained behind, staring at the tactical display showing the massive Andromax fleet movements. The fate of humanity would likely be decided in the next few days, and the weight of that responsibility pressed down on her like a physical force. Aboard the Andromax command ship, Inevitable Conquest. Imperator Kraz reviewed the final assault plans with satisfaction. The massive fleet assembled under his command represented the largest military force the Imperium had deployed in generations. The humans have been a worthy adversary, he acknowledged to his war council. Their ingenuity and adaptability are remarkable for such a young species. But their time has come. General Zalara stood at attention. her face carefully composed to hide her inner turmoil. Her transmission to Captain Park had been a treasonous act, but one she believed necessary to prevent catastrophe. Whether the humans would use her information wisely remained to be seen. "We will proceed with the planned jump sequence," Kraz continued. "The fleet will emerge at these coordinates near the human home system, then proceed directly to Earth. The new phase cascade weapons will target their major population centers and military installations. Resistance should collapse within hours." "And the containment issues?" Zalara asked carefully. Kraz dismissed her concern with a wave. "Our scientists assure me the weapons will function as designed. The human homeworld will be rendered uninhabitable, but the cascade effect will naturally dissipate once it encounters vacuum." Zalara knew this was dangerously wishful thinking, but further objections would only raise suspicion. "As you command, Imperator." In the Procyon Nebula, the Aurora's Wrath and its 3 sister ships took up concealed positions among the swirling dust clouds and radiation fields. Lieutenant Al-Sayed had worked without rest, modifying their 2 remaining phase cascade torpedoes to maximize their effectiveness while theoretically maintaining control of the reaction. "I've done everything I can," he told Mara, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "The torpedoes are calibrated to create an expanding sphere of effect approximately 15 kilometers in diameter. After that, the reaction should burn itself out." "Should?" Mara questioned. Al-Sayed met her gaze directly. "There are no guarantees with this technology, Captain, but these are the best containment protocols I can design with our current understanding." Mara nodded. "Then they'll have to be good enough." Sensor alerts chimed across the bridge. "Multiple hyperspace signatures detected," announced sensor operator Lisa Chen. "The Andromax fleet is arriving." One by one, enormous Andromax vessels materialized at the edge of the nebula. As General Zalara had indicated, they formed into a tight assault formation before beginning their approach through the dust cloud toward Earth's coordinates. They're maintaining proximity to coordinate their sensor sweeps through the interference, Tactical Officer Tanaka observed. "It's making them vulnerable, exactly as we hoped." Mara watched the enemy fleet's progress on the tactical display. "Time to optimal targeting position. 7 minutes at their current speed," Tanaka replied. "All ships, maintain emission control," Mara ordered across the secure task force channel. "We get one shot at this." The minutes crawled by as the massive Andromax fleet pushed deeper into the nebula. The 4 human corvettes remained powered down except for essential systems, virtually invisible among the swirling dust and radiation. "They're entering optimal range," Tanaka reported finally. Mara took a deep breath. "Lieutenant Al-Sayed, final status on the torpedoes?" "Armed and ready." "Captain," she nodded. "Target the center mass of their formation. All ships, prepare for emergency jump the moment torpedoes are away." The Aurora's Wrath's targeting systems locked onto the heart of the Andromax fleet. The other corvettes positioned themselves to create a crossfire pattern that would funnel the Imperium vessels into the kill zone. Fire. 2 phase cascade torpedoes launched simultaneously from the Aurora's Wrath, streaking through the nebula toward the packed Andromax formation. At the same moment, the human corvettes powered up their engines and began their escape maneuvers. Aboard the inevitable Conquest, the weapons officer detected the incoming projectiles too late. "Unknown ordnance approaching. Impact in 5 seconds." Imperator Kraz barely had time to comprehend the threat before the torpedoes detonated at the center of his fleet. Unlike conventional explosions, the phase cascade effect began as 2 pinpoints of brilliant white light. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like twin suns being born, the points expanded into perfect spheres of nothingness, regions where matter simply ceased to exist. Ship after ship vanished, not destroyed but unmade, as the effect spread through the tightly packed formation. "Evasive action!" Kraz roared, but the command came too late for many of his vessels. 30 ships, Then 50, then 70 disappeared into the expanding void. On the Aurora's wrath, Lieutenant Al-Sayed monitored the cascade effect with mounting horror. "Captain, the reaction is exceeding predicted parameters. The nebula's charged particles are amplifying the effect beyond our calculations." "Can you shut it down remotely?" Mara demanded. "Negative. Once initiated, the cascade is self-sustaining." Al-Sayed's hands flew over his console. "But I'm detecting an unusual pattern. The two reaction spheres are repelling each other. They're creating a kind of quantum pressure wave between them." Through the Aurora's wrath's sensors, they watched as the two spheres of nothingness expanded to nearly 20 kilometers each, well beyond the predicted 50 before gradually slowing. The reaction between them created strange distortions in space-time, visible as rippling waves through the nebula. "The reactions are burning out," Al-Sayed reported with palpable relief. "The quantum field is stabilizing." The final tally was devastating. Of the 120 Andromax vessels that had entered the nebula, fewer than 30 remained. The rest had been erased from existence, leaving behind no debris, no radiation, only emptiness where they had once been. The inevitable conquest was among the survivors. Having been on the outer edge of the formation, Imperator Kraz stared at the tactical display in disbelief as the scope of the disaster became clear. "3/4 of our fleet. Gone," he whispered. General Zalara stood beside him, her compound eyes reflecting the emergency lighting. "We must withdraw. Imperator, we cannot continue to Earth with our forces so depleted." For once. Kraz had no argument. The shock of such a comprehensive defeat had shattered his certainty. "Sound the retreat. All vessels. Emergency jump to rally point Sigma." As the surviving Andromax ships fled the nebula, the human task force regrouped at a safe distance. Despite their victory, the mood aboard the Aurora's wrath was somber. They had witnessed the awesome destructive potential of their weapon, a potential that exceeded even their worst projections. "We need to report this to Earth immediately," Mara said. "The phase cascade technology is too dangerous. It needs to be contained, possibly abandoned altogether." Lieutenant Al-Sayed nodded in agreement. "The interaction between the two torpedoes created effects I never anticipated. If we had deployed more, or if the Andromax had used their versions simultaneously." He didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone understood the implication. 3 days later, representatives from Earth and the Andromax Imperium met on neutral ground, a space station orbiting Barnard's star. Captain Mara Park led the human delegation. General Zalara, now acting as regent following Imperator Kraz's removal from power, represented the Imperium. "The recent confrontation has demonstrated that continued escalation serves neither of our peoples," Zalara began formally. "The Andromax Imperium proposes a cessation of hostilities and the establishment of defined borders between our territories." Mara nodded. "Earth agrees, with the addition of a critical stipulation: all research and deployment of phase cascade technology must cease immediately. All existing weapons must be decommissioned under mutual supervision." "The Imperium accepts this condition," Zalara replied without hesitation. "Our scientists have reviewed the data from the Procyon engagement. They believe that multiple overlapping cascade reactions could potentially create a runaway effect that would threaten entire star systems, possibly beyond." The negotiations continued for several days, addressing issues of territorial boundaries, trade protocols, and cultural exchange. But the most significant outcome was the Procyon Accords, a treaty that not only ended the conflict but established the first galactic ban on a weapon of mass destruction. Lieutenant Rafiq Al-Sayed, attending as a technical advisor, found himself in the uncomfortable position of helping to dismantle his life's work. Yet, as he explained the dangers of the technology to both human and alien scientists, he felt a growing sense of relief. Creation and destruction were two sides of the same coin, and humanity had come perilously close to flipping that coin without understanding the stakes. 6 months after the Procyon Nebula engagement, Captain Mara Park stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned peace station Concordia, watching ships from dozens of species dock and depart. The Andromax conflict had drawn attention from throughout the galaxy, and the peaceful resolution had opened diplomatic channels that Earth had previously been excluded from. General Zalara joined her at the viewport, her alien physiology no longer seeming so strange after months of cooperation. "You took an enormous risk contacting us," Mara observed. "Why?" Zalara's compound eyes reflected the starlight. "For thousands of years, the Imperium conquered because we could, because our technology and numbers made it inevitable. Humanity forced us to confront a question we had never needed to ask. Should we? Just because we can dominate, does that mean we must?" Mara considered this. "And now? Now we learn a new way. Not conquest, but coexistence. It will not be easy. There are many in the Imperium who resent this change, but the alternative was mutual destruction." Lieutenant Al-Sayed approached, carrying data tablets containing the final verification reports on the phase cascade weapon decommissioning. "It's done," he said simply. "All known weapons have been neutralized, and the research data has been secured in joint custody." "Not destroyed?" Mara asked with surprise. "Knowledge cannot be truly destroyed," Al-Sayed replied. "Better to preserve it with proper warnings and safeguards than risk it being rediscovered without context." Mara nodded thoughtfully. "So what will you work on now, Rafik?" "For the first time in many months," the engineer smiled genuinely, "I'm heading a joint human Andromax research team studying controlled quantum field manipulation. The same principles that made the weapon so destructive could potentially revolutionize energy production, space travel, even medicine." As they spoke, a notification chimed on Mara's communicator. The Aurora's Wrath had completed its refit and awaited her command for a new mission. This time, exploration rather than warfare. "The universe is vast," Zalara observed, noting Mara's expression. "And your species has a remarkable appetite for discovery. It's what brought us to the stars in the first place," Mara replied. "Not conquest, but curiosity." She gazed out at the swirling nebula visible through the viewport, a cosmic reminder of both destruction and creation. Humanity had survived its first major interstellar conflict not through superior firepower, but through the courage to step back from the brink of mutual annihilation. The Aurora's Wrath would sail again, but its phase cascade torpedoes had been replaced with scientific instruments and diplomatic supplies. The ship that had nearly witnessed the end of two civilizations would now help build bridges between them. As Mara prepared to return to her command, she took one last look at the stars spread before her. The Andromax had mocked human ships and paid the price for their arrogance. But in the end, both species had learned the same lesson. True power lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when not to. The disintegration of the Andromax fleet had marked the end of one chapter in humanity's journey among the stars. But as the Aurora's Wrath prepared for its new mission, Mara knew it was just the beginning of a much longer story, one that would be written not in destruction, but in discovery.